Hello, this is Deborah Matthews, Vicar of Verwood, with a thought for today. I have spent the last week in a caravan with my son and my grandchildren. I must confess, I was slightly daunted beforehand, but it has been wonderful. It brought back for me lots of memories when we had taken our children when they were young for caravan and chalet holidays. There's lots of competition between the children, but also lots of praise and support as they encourage each other in their pursuits. In the pool, there were widths underwater and a length of the pool for our 5-year-old granddaughter. The visit to the model village, last seen by me when I was their age, reminded me of the wonder and the awe of looking at new things through the eyes of a child. The village had changed somewhat in the intervening years, and now there is even a dragon breathing fire from the top of a castle. Well, food, as ever, featured high on the agenda in this holiday, and we enjoyed a mixed menu. We had one special meal in an Italian restaurant, and on that night we all dressed up. Some of our other meals were in the caravan where we dressed down. But wherever we are, we know how important it is to wash our hands before we eat. But some of our other customs, perhaps saying prayers before meals, or waiting for everyone to be sat down at the table before anyone starts eating, are not always possible when our circumstances are different. And in a caravan, it is tricky for us to all sit and eat around the table together, particularly when there is a 1,000-piece puzzle on it at various stages of completion. So perhaps sometimes our table manners had to adapt according to the situation. In the Gospel of St. Mark, chapter 7, we hear the Pharisees complaining that Jesus and his disciples eat with defiled hands. This discussion about hand washing is clearly very pertinent for us today. Washing our hands is pretty important at any time, but at the moment it is more so than ever. On Sunday mornings in church, after the altar is laid and before the Eucharistic prayer, I pour water over my hands into a little bowl. And this is not because my hands need to be washed again, but it is a ritual hand washing. It's not about physical cleanliness, but it is a reminder of how we need to be prepared, not only spiritually, but in our minds and body before we receive Jesus in the Eucharist. Rituals often begin as sensible behaviour, like spraying our hands with sanitizer before we receive communion. That is not a ritual, but it's a sensible precaution. But who knows when it will no longer be necessary, and by then it could have taken on a different meaning altogether and become part of a ritual. So we have to be careful not to let ritual become more important than what it points us towards. Our religious rituals are to help us to worship God, not to become more important than God. Jesus had offended the Pharisees because of his lack of observance of the ritual laws. The Pharisees had accused the disciples of eating with unclean hands. But Jesus responded by saying that it was not their ritual observance that made a person clean, but what comes out of them, the way they live their lives. Our thoughts and our words and our actions come out of who we are. When we allow selfishness and cruelty or hardness of heart to determine our behaviour, then we cut ourselves off from God. Religious rituals serve no purpose if they are seen as an end in themselves, because in themselves they cannot stop a heart determined to do evil. This week we will be having coffee and cake after our church service, and this will be the first time that we are sharing food together after a church service since the beginning of the pandemic. We will, of course, be extremely careful and observe lots of washing and sanitizing of hands before we share in the cake and coffee. We don't always have cake, but we will be celebrating together and giving thanks for our brilliant youth worker Helen and wishing her love and prayers as she leaves us to embark upon her new ministry. So God bless you all this week and keep you safe and joyful, and I hope that you too get to enjoy some cake.